Welcome to my podcast, Why Didn't Anyone Tell Me This? With my guests, we are discussing health issues, questions you may have, and debunking some of the many myths around our health. And it's a great privilege today to be talking to who I can say, I feel confident now saying one of my recent friends. We're doing a great project together, which we'll talk about. But Dr. Nicky Keay, we're going to talk about exercise for women's health. Now, Nicky studied medicine at the University of Cambridge. She was part of the international medical team that developed an anti doping test for growth hormone. Nicky is an honorary clinical lecturer in the Division of Medicine at University College London. She lectures and research in the areas of exercise endocrinology. She works mainly with exercisers, dancers, and athletes, and with women experiencing perimenopause and menopause. And as we'll talk about towards the end of this podcast, she's part of the team that we've set up this year at University College London, developing the UK's first menopause education and support programme. Now, Nicky is also medical advisor to Scottish Ballet, and she is author of the book Hormones, Health and Human Potential, which we are going to talk about today. But as always, we're going to start with hearing about Nicky's journey to date and why, Nicky, did you want to become a doctor, and where has your interest in exercise, especially dance, come from?
Well, thanks so much, Joyce, for inviting me to come on this. I'm really looking forward to discussing with you. So, actually, being enjoying dance and enjoying sport and activity came first before I decided to be a doctor. I was taken to dance classes by my grandmother, as it happened, from the age of 4, because she herself was a pretty good dancer in her time. She actually got invited by Nanette de Valois to join the company, which went on to include the greats like Margot Fonteyn. So I was already going to dance, and I was doing lots of sport and exercise, both in and out of school, really enjoying this. And it sort of occurred to me, even at that young age, as a youngster and my early teens, it's like I'm really enjoying doing dancing, especially, and sport and activity. But I wonder what it is that I do this because I enjoy it, because also I want to improve. And so it was really a question in my mind: why? How does exercise? We all know exercise makes you fitter, but I was just so curious. I was just wondering. I wonder what it is that happens inside our bodies, and that's where we come on to medicine. I enjoyed all the subjects at school, I have to be honest, but particularly science, because it answered questions like this. Also, it seemed to offer the possibility to answer questions like this. And so that's why I decided to study medicine, because I wanted to find more about what happens inside the human body, what's going on, always with a mind that I could then go back and apply it, what I would learn as a doctor, to, dancers, athletes, but also people in general, to explain that question of what it is. Why is exercise so good for us, and how does it influence our hormones and our health? By the way, Joyce, I have to tell people a little story that I was considering, or thinking, imagining I could be maybe a professional dancer. And I did actually do an audition for the Royal Ballet School when I was a youngster. I didn't get accepted because I know that was like the top ballet school. So I thought, well, I've got to try. And then it was at that point I realized that actually I was probably more is better from the point of view of what I could achieve, and also what I could contribute by studying medicine and then going back and dancing, and of course keep dancing throughout my studies and my life, as I've gone on to do. So that's a long-winded way of telling you how come I ended up studying medicine, being a doctor, and why I've got this particular interest in this relationship between exercise and hormones.
I love it. And we have got a lot of overlap there, because I started dance when I was little. I did ballet and tap as well. I always would love to have been a dancer. I
Mm.
really, really loved it. And we used to do shows when I was little. And I think that gave me my urge to sort of talk in public and perform in public. Um, no one in my family danced at all. Your grandmother, I've seen photos of it. It was absolutely inspirational. So I also wanted to figure out how the body worked and how disease worked, etc. So when you were saying that, that was really, when I was about 9 or 10, was in my mind, and that's why I became a scientist. So I still dance. I still go to dance classes when I can. I still go, everyone knows, I think by now, I go day raving every few weeks. It's wonderful that we have for older people all these raves during the day so we can dance for hours on end. And I've told my kids that when I can't dance anymore, that's it. I'm going to bail out of this life because it's such a huge passion of mine. But we'll talk about exercise in general as well. I mean, there's so many hobbies that people could do, but exercise, you've said as well, it's not just about losing weight and it's not what we look like. It's about our short and long term health. And in your book, you talk about how important exercise is for women's health. So can we delve into that a bit more? You tell us about the short and long term health benefits of exercising?
Well, I'm delighted to be speaking to a fellow dancer, Joyce, by the way. But you just described it just there, the short-term benefits of doing exercise. And we say exercise, we're including anything. The most important thing is enjoyment. So for us, it happens to be dancing. But for others, it might be walking, it might be running, it might be swimming, cycling. Exercise is the most important thing is what you enjoy, because that is one of the big short-term benefits of taking exercise. The enjoyment, the mental health aspect of it. You enjoy doing something you can really throw yourself into, and potentially also this might mean being with other people, with friends. I mean, the people in my ballet class, for example, they remember when I was pregnant going to class, and that's a long time ago, seeing as my boys are now in their 20s. So you get the idea that doing exercise is, of course, very good for you in terms of your short-term mental health, social health, and also absolutely physical health. So that's probably more the longer-term benefits, I would say, because, by the way, when we talk about health, Joyce, we should point out that health isn't just, as you say, lots of people think it's just the physical thing. It's the physical health, it's the mental health, and it's the social health. And so exercise ticks all these boxes. So in the short term, like I said, you just get a buzz from going and doing something you enjoy, and often with friends that you can enjoy the same thing. But in terms of longer term health benefits, if we split that maybe down, Joyce, a little bit further into the next days and weeks, your hormones spring into action and they drive those beneficial adaptations to the exercise you've done. So if you go and do some dancing and you get a little bit out of puff, right, then actually that's very good, because then gradually in the next few days, your cardiovascular health, your heart health will improve, the strength at which your heart pumps and the blood goes around your body. So that's great. Metabolic health. So you have better blood glucose control and body composition in terms of you obviously would prefer to, everyone needs a little bit of fat, but not too much. And so it really favors, the body composition in terms of favoring muscle rather than fat, for example. So those take a little bit longer to build up. So those are the long-term beneficial effects. And of course, we should also mention bone, shouldn't we? Even swimming, although it's not putting weight through the skeleton, still you're using your muscles and those pull on the bones. But all these types of exercise we're describing, whether it's dancing, running, whatever it is, these are all going to be helpful for the short term. You just feel good and want to go back for doing more. But also, it's certainly absolutely in the long term. It's keeping you fit, physically fit, but also mentally fit, I would say, if I can put it like that. Especially in dance, you have to pick up things quickly, and you have to maybe learn new techniques in other sports or things like this. So exercise is definitely top of the list for both your short-term and long-term health. And also, I think exercise, Joyce, we should really stress, is something everyone can do. Even if you don't have to have lots of money or equipment, even everyone, it's free to go walking, for example, then that's a very good starting point. So I think that's the really big advantage of exercise. It's open to everybody. There's not a starting entry point. You can just go out and walk around the block, and that's a good point if you're not haven't done much exercise before, or if you have got a particular passion like we have, dancing, then absolutely, continue to do that, and it will really benefit you from all points of view of your health.
Thank you. You've mentioned a few times there mental health. So I think many
Mm.
people don't realise. Again, they think of fitness and they think of bodybuilders and they think of muscles and a six pack. But as you said, our mental health is so important. And with exercise, there's many real reasons why exercise improves our mental health. Did you want to say a little bit more about mental health?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it gives you that feel good feeling. So those are the short term hormones, of course, the endorphins, etc., all more precisely neurotransmitters. So that's why you feel good. You get that buzz, but also the going back to what drives the adaptations or the response to exercise. It's these internal hormones, these internal chemical messengers, which absolutely we are all aware that they will have physical effects in terms of your body composition and that we discussed just now. But these hormones also, by the way, are really important for our mental health. They go into the brain and help us, well, think more clearly, if I can put it like that. And we feel good. It's mood as well, because you're much more likely to be able to think clearly, cognitive function, just being on the ball, if you're in a good mood. We all know that if you're feeling like a bit, dragged down. Actually, if you go and do some exercise, that gets the blood flowing, gets the hormones pumping. And so actually, it improves your mental health in terms of your mood, but therefore also your brain power, if you will. So I think that it's a really important point, Joyce, to bring out there, that the exercise is for the physical. Yes, we all know that, but actually people maybe forget. It's also above the neck as well. It's really helpful. And although we admire the superficial appearance, the six pack or whatever, that is literally superficial. But actually, it doesn't really. That well, I mean, if you're competing in a bodybuilding competition, I accept that is your objective actually for that superficial look, if you will. But actually, exercise is so much more than that. It's also our internal health, especially our hormones, internal health, including our brain, our mental health as well.
And your book, you talk a lot about the menstrual cycle and how exercise and hormones interact during the menstrual cycle. So before we go, we're going to go into each cardiovascular and muscle things in more detail in a moment. But I wanted to just pause and talk about the menstrual cycle. We've been doing a lot of interviews with young girls about how it's making them feel. And obviously, during our menstrual cycle, our hormones are varying quite a lot. So, what advice would you give to women about exercising, during their menstrual cycle? Should they do different exercises at different times? And can exercise help them during the whole cycle?
Mm. Well, there's a lot of debate about. I mean, the menstrual cycle is underpinned by these amazing fluctuations. I'm saying amazing because the choreography of the hormones during the menstrual cycle is second to none. It's fantastic, really intricate. And these hormones, especially the hormones that the ovaries produce during the menstrual cycle, the estrogen and the progesterone, um, you know, these vary a lot, which is important because uh, each individual woman, she's got her own personal variation. Although we see in the textbooks, there's a nice little graph that, oh, this is how it looks. But that doesn't mean that every single woman will look exactly like that. There might be variations on the theme in terms of the timing of these hormones, the levels of these hormones, and crucially, the individual biological response to the fluctuations of hormones. So you're quite right. Some women will go through their menstrual cycle and say, "Hey, I felt fine throughout it. There wasn't a problem." But others will notice big differences, like cramps during menstruation at the beginning of the cycle, or, for example, premenstrual symptoms. So I think that what it comes down to saying is there is not an absolute rule book or blueprint for this. You should do this exercise here, this exercise there in your cycle. I know there are some menstrual monitoring apps that do that. They give out very generic advice. They say you should be feeling a fantastic now just before ovulation. You can really do that strength training. which it might be true for some women if by chance that is truly where they are in their cycle, and it is and if their estrogen is rising at that time, and if their biological response is, as we know, happens in the petri dish in the lab, you see. So there's all these ifs and buts along the way. So I think my best advice, honestly, Joyce, is to women is you do go on your feel. So you can glance at these menstrual apps or old-fashioned days, write it down with pen and paper when you have your periods, and then you can kind of work out where you might be in your cycle. But ultimately, it's on feel. Am I feeling really good? If you're feeling really good, then great. Go for it with your exercise. But if you're not feeling so good and a little bit sluggish and a little bit tired, then be kind to yourself. Say, well, I was planning on going for, I don't know, a really hard swim, but actually I'm not feeling so great today. I'm going to just do a walk maybe, and I will put off that swim to another time. And if you are sort of flexible in your approach like that, I'm hoping that, especially the teenage girls won't find their menstrual cycles so problematic. Getting worried that, oh, why am I feeling so bad? And I've got to force myself to do it. And, the menstrual app said I should be feeling great and I'm not. It's like you have to kind of have confidence and get to know your own body and listen to your own body. But certainly in terms of those women who do have um, issues, problems, as you mentioned, Joyce, we know that the menstruation can produce cramps, but actually there's good evidence and studies to show that doing some gentle exercise, at least during that time, can actually be really helpful in those cramps. So I used to find actually that going swimming, for example, was helpful during then, because it sort of elongates the body and stretches it out. But there's also evidence to show that something gentle like Pilates, again with a little bit of stretching, can help if that's a problematic time for you. And similarly for the in the premenstrual stage, so in that luteal phase, so the bit in the couple of weeks before your period, if you're feeling low in mood, just a bit fatigued, then again, just doing some gentle exercise can again help, because we've said already how excellent exercise is for your mental health and your mood. So I think that's my best advice. Go with the flow. How you feel, and don't be concerned if others are telling you, or menstrual apps are telling you should be feeling great and you're not. It just might be you. That's fine. We all want to be individuals after all. We're not clones. We're I don't know, you'll probably know that lovely quote, Joyce, from the Vice President, Royal College of Obstetrics Gynecologists. She said, "We need to treat women as individuals, not statistics." I mean, she was actually talking specifically about perimenopause, but I have to say it applies throughout the woman's life, because our hormones are so amazing and intricate and beautiful choreography. So we need to consider ourselves as individuals, not statistics.
Thank you so much, because I had, I mean, I don't have a menstrual cycle anymore, but I'd been reading all these reports and suggestions and advice that women should be doing different exercises. As you said, in the middle of their cycle, they're supposed to be feeling amazing. And when they're
Mm,
premenstrual, they might not, they might want to do yoga or something lighter than, something high impact. But you are totally right. We are individuals, and we do a lot of work around that in the perimenopause. And I'd never thought
mm,
about, it's obvious, but the exercise relation to
mm,
our menstrual cycle. Not all women are going to feel the same. And that's going to be an important message through our exercise discussion today. We are all individual. And as you said, we have to listen to our own body, not the body of the woman next to us,
mhm,
or our sister or
mhm,
whoever. We've got to do what works for us, which is brilliant advice. So let's go. We'll come back to specific issues for women, and we'll come obviously to the perimenopause. But let's look at a couple of the key types of exercise. So we've got some worrying data about cardiovascular health for women, it being one of the biggest killers of women globally. And many countries, the top killer. So heart attacks are the top killers of women. And we always normally associate that with men. And I just wanted to hear what you
Mm.
think we should be doing for cardiovascular fitness. So what's the good things that women could do to look after their heart?
Yeah, just to stress that point, Joyce, about cardiovascular disease concerningly being on the increase, and also I think uh, I know we're going to talk about it specifically shortly, but menopause. If you ask most women, in fact, they did in a study and said, "What do you think the main killer of women after menopause is?" And they answered breast cancer, when actually
Mm.
it's swinging more and more in favour of cardiovascular disease, and it becomes to equal that of men because of our female hormones are amazing things, by the way, for our cardiovascular health. So, what to do in terms? So, cardiovascular health, yeah, absolutely super important to, um, it's not just a protection thing, but why not enhance it? Actually, if you're cardiovascularly fit, then going to be able to pump your blood very effectively and efficiently throughout the body. So even when you're not exercising, you're going to have a good supply of oxygen and nutrients to your brain. So it's not just cardiovascular fitness, or exercise isn't just important if you are looking to improve your exercise performance. It's your performance, well, it's your health overall. It's really important. So so it's very important to do that. And what are the best types of exercise to improve that? And no surprise, it would be things that test out the cardiovascular system. So-called aerobic exercise like swimming, cycling, dancing, of course, all those sorts of things. And lots of those activities, or some of them, are actually outside as well. So that's a really good combination. I love actually, I mean, running is one of them, but I have to be honest, I'm not a great runner. I don't particularly enjoy it myself. So actually, cycling for me is great because it means I get outside, get to look around, get some fresh air, and I know I'm also giving my heart a good workout.
Yeah, I was going to come back to that later, but exercising outside and exercising outside with friends, again, they tick physical and mental
Mm,
health boxes, so they're really, really good. Um, so I know lots of people that just walk, and they say, "Oh, well, I do lots of exercise. I walk," and it was quite interesting when I first got my Apple Watch, and was very aware that sometimes you might go on a really long walk and then it says you've done 15 minutes exercise, and that's because of the heart rate monitor and
mm,
needing that heart rate to go up to register it as exercise. So I just wondered what you thought about that. Is it, and I believe fast walking is great, and I know that
mm,
the government a few years ago, what do they call it, was it Active 10, I think they called it. They were trying to encourage people to do 10 minutes of fast walking, well, 3 lots of 10 minutes. So if you
mm,
did 30 minutes fast walking a day, rather than our obsession with these 10,000 steps, which if you do it very, very slowly is
mm,
obviously better than doing nothing. But is
mm,
that really good for our body overall, but certainly our heart, if we're not increasing our heart rate?
mm. Yeah, that's a very important point. Because doing sort of low intensity, long duration does have some benefits, sort of fat burning and sort of metabolic health, maybe, aerobic exercise. But you're right, if you're looking specifically for cardiovascular beneficial effects, then actually it is more the heart rate thing. So the key message here, Joyce, is I think mix it up. Because the other thing to point out is that the body responds, or more specifically, the hormones respond and drive adaptations according to the type of exercise you do. In other words, you want light and shade. So if you are doing something that gets the heart rate up, make sure it does get the heart rate up. So a brisk walk, or a decent fast swim or something like that, and it can be within that block of doing exercise. So, for example, I went swimming to the pool this morning, and yeah, I did a slow warm up. Yeah, I just got the muscles going, so that was low, aerobic. My heart rate probably wasn't very high, but then I did try and put in something a little bit faster to get the heart rate up. So even within the same exercise session, like you say, if you're doing some walking, then you can absolutely do a little bit of a faster walk to get the breathing rate up, get the heart rate up, and then also having that lower intensity for the more aerobic type exercise. So I think that's the other key thing we should highlight, Joyce, is that I get accused often of training or doing exercise in the grey zone. So just doing it like neither easy nor hard, or just the whole lot is just in this sort of no man's land. So if possible, whatever your preferred exercise is, and actually a dance class is great for this, isn't it, Joyce? Because certainly ballet, it's actually built in. You start off very slowly at the bar with slow movements. And then you get a little bit more intense as you come into the center. And then the last bit is like high intensity. And your heart rate definitely gets up when you're doing all the jumping. So maybe that's a useful thing to remind people of. Try and mix up the level of intensity of your exercise, because your hormones will thank you for it.
And yeah, talking about mixing it up. So why is doing some improving our muscle strength so important for women?
Well, I mean, number one, just from a functional point of view, we are going to have to lift up some heavy things from time to time, right? And so actually just having some strength there is a good idea. But the reason about doing strength work is so you can functionally do things without, causing yourself an injury, but also muscular strength, also in the terms of not just, oh, can I lift up this heavy thing, but actually am I engaging the muscles for support for good posture? And actually that's quite important when you are doing any sort of strength training. Strength training, we should say maybe, Joyce, that yes, there are some that like doing the free weights. I personally, I don't. Anyway, so when we say strength, we should say there is lifting weights, free weights, or those machines you see in the gym. Also, you can do resistance strength work with exercise bands. Resistance bands, that's quite a good way. Pilates, some of those apparatus, those machines with the springs is also pretty good. You could also be doing strength work. Actually, there's a recent study showing that body weight exercise, so holding the dreaded plank, is actually useful as well. So when we talk about strength, it's any of those sorts of things, obviously encouraging the muscles to engage and improve their function, and also really good for metabolic health, because muscles are very metabolically active tissue. So they will help with blood glucose control, and obviously body composition itself in terms of muscle versus fat. And these effects actually persist even after you stop doing the exercise, the strength exercise. So of course, when you're actually doing it, you're using those muscles, but then when you stop, then you still have this increased metabolic rate, as we say. So the muscles will basically suck up glucose and want more energy to restore and repair. So I think those are the main reasons why, including some sort of strength work, whatever it looks like for you, that's going to be really, really beneficial for your health.
I found with I've been kayaking a lot. I was supposed to be kayaking this morning actually, but it
Yeah.
got cancelled. That's another story. But kayaking, I felt it's so my arms are aching by then. I feel I've done a lot of
Yes.
resistance at the end of that. So right, we've got the heart going. We've got the muscles are strong. You've talked a little bit about endurance. What about flexibility and the importance of stretching?
Yeah, well, flexibility, I mean, from a dancing point of view, that sort of comes with the territory. So, but I know that lots of people don't necessarily include that when you're thinking, what sorts of exercise should I do? I think most people would know about, getting the pulse rate up, cardiovascular, and also we've had lots of people talking about strength being important, but actually flexibility sometimes doesn't get so much of a mention, but it's really important. What do we mean by that? We mean that if you are flexible, and so you have the ability to move your joints through the full range of movement, then actually that's going to make your movement itself mechanically better, rather than having a very restricted range of movement of your joints if you are very stiff. So definitely including some stretching is really important. The main things you can stretch are the muscles themselves. So if we think of a joint, let's take the knee joint. There's lots of muscles which are around the knee joint, but actually the things that are quite rigid are the ligaments and tendons. So the tendons attach the muscle to the bone and the ligaments stabilize it. So obviously you don't want to be stretching those, because otherwise you make the joint unstable. But you can stretch the muscles, and that will enable the joint to go through its full range of movement. So that's why keeping the flexibility going is really important. We all know as youngsters, babies, when they fall asleep and they're in that beautiful frog position where their knees flap down right flat on the side of the bed. We know that when you're really small, you have that flexibility. But obviously, as you get older, if you're not actively looking to include some stretching in your exercise, then things will literally stiffen up. But I think we should also remind people, Joyce, that stretching, there are two types of stretching. You should always do some sort of stretching, dynamic stretching, before you exercise. So that means that you're not holding a stretch position, but you're, for example, when I went swimming this morning, I do some arm circling just to get the muscles and going and the blood flowing. And then when you do your static stretching, so if you've been doing a lot of walking or running, then, for example, doing the calf stretch, you do that at the end when your muscles are already got lots of blood there, and then you're going to get the benefits of that static stretching, and that's when you should hold it so the muscles can elongate. So stretching, really important part, the recipe of all the types of fitness to consider and include, and also even within the stretching there is different types of stretching.
And as you say, if we don't use it, we're going to lose it, and we will get stiffer and
Yep.
stiffer. Those joints and muscles, as we age, will get stiffer and stiffer. And so, again, the variation. My ideal week is today I did body balance. Tomorrow I'm doing body combat and body pump. So I've got a bit of cardio, a bit of weights. And then later in the week, I'll be doing some cold water swimming. We'll come on to different types of exercise in a minute. But going back to stretching, so you said in your book that we need to hold a stretch for 30 seconds. And I've heard this so many times, but in all the classes I ever go to, we never do that. We're lucky if we do 10 seconds, to be honest. So why is 30 seconds so important?
It does seem like a long time, I know. You're like, sometimes in ballet class, it's like we've done lots of work on demi-point, so we're using our calf muscles. And then our teacher said, right, we're going to do a stretch. And she said, I'm going to time you. She's a physiotherapist, so she doesn't know what she's talking about. She said, right, you've got to hold it for 30 seconds. And she times us, and it's like, this is going on forever. So it does seem like a long time. The reason is that the muscles, if you look at it at a microscopic level, it's like lots of rowers where they're all stuck out, you see. That's what muscle looks like under the microscope. So if you just do it cursorily, then the oars won't move. But actually, if you hold it there, then the muscle will relax and it will allow it to elongate. So that's why just a cursory, like a couple of seconds, just doing a calf stretch. It's not really a calf stretch. It's just, it's not really anything. So you have to give it that full duration of the 30 seconds so that the muscles can release, literally, and you can elongate it. We know this just, as you hold it, you do feel it. Oh, it's easing, it's giving. And also the other thing we should make clear, Joyce, I don't know about you, but in the 80s, it was all the thing, bounce your stretch. It's like, no, don't do that. So people bouncing their calf stretch, going bounce, bounce, bounce. Don't do it. Don't do it. Because the little oars in your muscles will sort of stick there and then they get jolted. And so actually you're more likely to tear the muscle doing that. So the magic recipe is do your static stretches, hold them for 30 seconds after your exercise, whatever it is, when the muscles are warm, and to give them that opportunity to stretch out and elongate and have a little rest. Let the rowers disengage for a moment.
That's a great way of describing it, Nicky. Thank you. I will reveal my party trick. At 60, I can still do the splits, but I always tell my friends, I try not. I try not to do it. I think it's a bit embarrassing if I'm sort of dressed up and splayed across the floor in the splits, and I don't get up very elegantly anymore. I actually used to be a cartwheel into the splits, but I try not to do that anymore. But then I tell my friends,
that is impressive.
Is it?
Yeah, I can't do the splits anymore. I can't do the
Oh,
splits anymore, just to say. I used to be able to do them when I was obviously a youngster, but I have to say, Joyce, I kind of almost don't want to try because yeah, as you say, the getting out of it is often the harder bit. So I think I'll leave it to you.
well, exactly that. I was going to say that then sometimes friends try to do it, and I say, please don't try to do it. If you know you're
Mm,
40, 50 or 60 and you've never done it before, please don't try this at home. So and actually I do it much better with one leg forward, my right leg forward than my left. Anyway, but let's that's just my little another little ditty for today. So let's also talk about balance. So, as we age, those of us
mm,
with elderly parents will know that something that happens very common is they fall. And the
mm,
data for if a
mm,
older woman breaks her hip and certain other
mm,
bones is really, it's really bad data. The chance of surviving and recovering is really low.
mm.
So, why is balance so important? And what can we do to improve our balance?
Yeah, I mean, as we get older, the female hormones, especially estrogen, declines, then the bones themselves become weaker. So you are potentially more prone to fracture. But of course, if you haven't got good balance, that this also contributes to the increased risk of fracture. Not only are the bones weak, but if your balance is poor, you're more likely to trip over or lose your balance and fall over and break a bone. And as you said, the data is not great for the outcomes of that. And I remember that my sister came home from school and found her on the floor with a broken neck of femur because she had lost her balance. Actually, as it happened, a bit of clothing got stuck in a drawer. So, yeah, there was a little bit of something. But the thing is, if most of us, if we fall over from standing height, by the way, please don't do this at home either as an experiment, but most of us, if you fall over from a standing height, just a little stumble, probably you wouldn't break something, but it's also the innocuous fall from not very high up or not a high energy impact. That's the real, risk and something we want to try and prevent. And so, therefore, balance is a key part of this. And at this point, I want to give a shout out to the excellent infographic from the Royal Osteoporosis Society, which is called Strong, Straight, Steady. So, strong, yes, we need to strengthen our bones with the strength training, for example. Straight posture. If you've got good, strong muscles, hopefully you'll be more upright. And then the steady thing. That's the crucial bit of this equation. So proprioception means the awareness of where your body is in space. And hopefully doing ballet, I'm pretty aware of where my body is if the arabesque's right behind my head or something. But it's never too late to train things. This is the other thing. Lots of people say, "Oh well, I've never been very flexible. I'm never had good balance," so they kind of throw in the towel. It's like, no, you can still do it. And in fact, I was teaching a delightful gentleman who had a stroke, and he was just coming up to 90. And it was like, no, we can improve your balance for sure, because we don't want you falling over. So even just simple things like holding on to something steady, like a worktop surface, and just making sure you can balance there and you can transfer your weight from foot to foot. Everybody can do that when you're waiting for the kettle to boil. And if you get really ambitious, you find that super easy. Holding on to something, you can shut your eyes and do it as well. So train your body. Your body will respond to, how the type of exercise you do. So it's always worthwhile keeping that aspect going in terms of exercise. Yeah, absolutely. Stability and balance, super, super important.
Thank you, Nicky. And we've talked about the menstrual cycle. So, in my field, I've worked in fertility and the perimenopause for many years, and we see women and the men that are trying to get pregnant and maybe having a problem, and exercise has come up a lot. The advice is that they should be
Mm.
looking after their well-being, and they should be looking after their nutrition and sleep and exercise, etc. Have you got any guidance about pregnancy? What if and I think the exercise for the man is equally as important, but we'll just concentrate on the women
Mm.
today. So, what about if you're trying to get pregnant, or if you are pregnant? Have you got any advice for women around this time of their life?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Joyce, that, if you're looking to conceive, then taking care of your lifestyle in terms of your sleep, your exercise, and your nutrition is super important. And I'll tell you why. Because those three lifestyle things, or behaviors, if you want to call them that, those directly influence our hormones. And of course, getting pregnant, you're very dependent on the hormones and the menstrual cycle and ovulating, etc. So it's definitely for every woman looking to conceive and get pregnant, absolutely taking care of those things, especially and including the exercise. And you're right, also for the man as well, but we'll leave that one for another day. So definitely, if that is, if you are struggling to get pregnant, doing some exercise and just revising and reviewing what you're doing around your sleep patterns, and your nutrition, because we know these have a big influence on your hormones. So that's the getting pregnant. And then hopefully, when you are pregnant, then in terms of what exercise can I do? And I agree. I mean, I'm sure you're the same, that, when you are pregnant, you feel really responsible. You're just like, oh, I don't want to do the wrong thing. Maybe I shouldn't exercise or whatever. So I think, again, it goes back also to how you feel. So probably doing really high intensity in the early weeks isn't a good idea. And probably you won't feel like that, because if you have got, well, it's called morning sickness, but I call it continuous day nausea. You probably actually won't feel like doing that anyway. So actually your body's trying to tell you something. The body's saying, look, we're just sorting out the pregnancy, the implantation, we're just getting the placenta going. Please don't do high intensity exercise. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do anything. So some gentle swimming, some walking, that's fine in the early pregnancy. And then thereafter, again, it does pretty much go down to feel. I don't think women should be scared about doing exercise. Definitely, we don't want to say that. But obviously, common sense dictates it's not a good idea to start to take out marathon running, for example, if you've never been done running before. So it's just keeping going what you are already doing and comfortable with, but not pushing it. So, for example, I kept doing my 4 ballet classes a week, and my friends, they all laughing and joking. It's like, oh, we remember when you came in, it looked like you had this enormous cannonball in you, and there you were doing the dance class. But inevitably, just naturally, as I became more and more pregnant, it's like, I don't actually feel like I want to try and jump. I just don't want to. But you can do all the other things. So my best advice is keep doing the exercise that you enjoy and you're used to. It's not a time for taking up whatever, bungee jumping, or I don't know. Don't. But keep doing what you're doing, because that's what you enjoy and that's what you're used to doing. So you're less likely to get injured, and but just listen to your body and actually going on perceived exertion, how you feel. If you're feeling really, really puffed and just you're sort of thinking, your body will tell you, I don't want to do this, then just listen to it at that point. That's the best way of monitoring how far you should push it.
Brilliant, Nicky. You said the two things I would say, which is listen to your body and don't start something new. So we've had a lot of discussion about cold water swimming and being pregnant, and we've been trying for, I think we've been working on the document for about a year and a half. Obviously, there's no research on cold water swimming and pregnancy. We would
Mm.
never expose a newly pregnant woman to that. So we
No,
have
quite.
gather together all the information we can. And the advice absolutely is don't start it if you've never done it. So
Mm.
those that have been
Yeah,
doing it
quite.
since, before they were pregnant. So again, some people might remember the Paula Radcliffe picture of her running when she was very pregnant. But again, she's always done it. So that's the key. If you've always
Yeah.
done it and you feel okay to carry on, then you can. But yeah, don't start, and it's certainly not something extreme as cold water swimming if you've not done it before. So let's
Hmm.
move on to the good old perimenopause and menopause and exercise. Now, I always say to everyone, I exercised through my perimenopause. At the time, it was about 15 years ago, one of my students was doing a project on exercise and menopause, and it really helped me. It really motivated me. I mean, I was doing quite a lot anyway. I've always done quite a lot of classes and swimming and things, but certainly took it up to another level, and I felt it really helped. But uh, according to the data I'd
Mm.
read until fairly recently, the studies didn't seem to show that it really had helped some of the symptoms. But I think there's some more recent data out now that's a bit more encouraging. So, what would you say for the perimenopause and postmenopause woman?
Yeah, definitely. I think, well, one of the papers that caught my eye was saying that vasomotor symptoms, i.e., the dreaded hot flushes, that was improved in a study by doing exercise. The theory is that if you're doing exercise, your body has got to cope with the change in body temperature. I mean, why do you get hot flushes, by the way, is because it's thought that the temperature regulation center in the brain just gets a bit confused and messed up. And so that's why all your blood flows to the extremities and you feel really hot. And actually, interestingly, there's a less blood flow, cerebral blood flow, less blood flow to the brain, which could actually be. So hot flushes, there's a new thing saying maybe hot flushes and brain fog, there could be a reciprocal relationship there. Anyway, in this study I'm talking about, that they had two groups, and the women that did the exercise, they reported less severity of their hot flushes. And maybe the mechanism is because, as I say, the body kind of gets used to or reused to or regulating body temperature. So that's definitely can help with symptoms from that point of view. Also, I would say we've already said how excellent exercise is for your brain health, and your mental health and well-being. So I think just getting out and doing what you love doing, what you've been doing throughout your life, like off to my ballet class, it's like, okay, I'm just going to go to my ballet class. I'm there. I'm going to enjoy the moment, and it just puts you at your ease and in a different, in your familiar space. That is going to help your overall well-being and therefore your symptoms. Everything seems less. Uh, doesn't seem so bad when you come back from a ballet class. It's like, oh, okay, that now I went off feeling not so good, but now I feel better. But also in the nitty-gritty of the exercise, also there are now quite a lot of studies actually showing that apart from the symptoms, in terms of the health benefits of exercise, we've said they're important throughout the life, but particularly this time when your hormones are changing massively. The ovaries are retiring, and also other hormones like growth hormone, which is a so-called anabolic hormone, builds up muscles rather than fat. These are all on the decline, but this is not all doom and gloom. Again, you can look at doing exercise, and studies show that this improves your metabolic health, in other words, blood glucose control and body composition. So there's plenty of good reasons why. Number one, if you're already exercising, absolutely try and continue doing it. But also, if maybe you've let it slip, because I think that's the other thing, we get busy, right? And it's like, oh, I used to do all this exercise, and now I'm perimenopause, and now, have I got the confidence to go back to doing this exercise? Absolutely. And in fact, you'll feel a lot better for it from the point of view of your alleviating symptoms and, again, the long-term health benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. I think exercise around perimenopause and postmenopause is a win-win, especially if you do it with friends, and
Mm,
we'll finish off with different
mhm,
types of exercise that we can do. And you did mention bone health earlier, but obviously the three big problems we worry about postmenopause, what I worry about postmenopause, is our cardiovascular health, which we've talked about, dementia and Alzheimer's, and also osteoporosis. So let's
mm.
start with osteoporosis. So, um, what can women do to help with osteoporosis as they age?
Yeah, so the bones will decline in their bone mineral density because of the estrogen starts to go low after menopause. So that's what's going on. So what can you do to mitigate that? Certainly lifestyle, all the things we've discussed. Actually, interesting study showing that sleep helps. Sleep always helps. It's the chief nourisher in life's great feast. I love that quote from Shakespeare. Nutrition, of course, eating plenty of protein to prevent the muscles breaking down and also to support the bone health. But in terms specifically of exercise to support your bone health, well, it was that strong, straight, steady thing I mentioned with the Royal Osteoporosis Society. So this is where, if you can, weight, well, how should I put it? Strength training. There is sort of a gradation of what you feel are able and feel comfortable with doing. There is the straight up weight lifting, if you will, weight training, strength training. And there's a lovely study. I have to mention this study simply because it's of the name. It's called Lift More. That's the name of the study. I'm not even sure what the abbreviation is. And they found actually women who, I think they were in their 60s or 70s even, in that group that they gave supervised weight training, strength training to. Those women didn't lose height, their bones didn't squash down in their vertebrae, and actually, if anything, it improved. So definitely that's the sort of the top one you can do. But like I've admitted to, I don't really like doing that. And some people simply can't because maybe they've got injuries, they've got bad knees, whatever it is. So yeah, that if you can, that's brilliant. But if not, coming down the scale, the resistance bands that we mentioned, that's and you don't have to have fancy equipment, by the way. Going back to the weight training thing, you can get little handheld weights, or you can even use cans of soup or whatever. So we can all walk around with some weights and do some simple things like that. Resistance bands are great. So it's all about loading the skeleton, putting some stress through the skeleton to stimulate it. But if none of those things are possible, because you've recently had a joint replacement. I've got 2 replacement hips, by the way. But anyway, so I wasn't allowed to go in the studio for a few months. But during that time, I could still go swimming. And actually, the muscles pulling on the bones as I was swimming, that was, it's better than nothing. So I think that's the real key message I want to say, Joyce, about the bone health. It's such an important thing to consider. Sadly, both my grandmother and my mother, I know there's a family history of osteoporosis. So I'm trying to do everything I can to prevent that. And it's doing as much as you personally can. But I think there's so many messages there saying, oh, you have to do weight training. If you can, fantastic. But don't let that be a put off. Don't think, well, I can't do that, so I won't bother to do anything. Find what you can do to load your skeleton, because osteoporosis, also called the silent killer, brittle bone disease, that's the one that you don't want it to creep up on you and to fall over and end up with a broken hip.
Yes, definitely. And the third one I mentioned was Alzheimer's and dementia. And going back to what we were saying earlier about exercise and mental health, I've read that there's lots of evidence that exercise can reduce the risk of Alzheimer's and dementia. Have you got any comments about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, part of it is, I think, the blood flow. It just, gets your brain working. And we know that Alzheimer's doing those mental puzzles and all those sorts of things. But actually, for me, my mental puzzle is going to a ballet class and trying to remember all the steps that you're given. But whatever that exercise is, most of it will involve your brain. You've got to you've got to run the right way. You've got to listen to instructions if it's in a class. Particularly, I think that's in that group environment of the class. So definitely keeping the brain agile through exercise. You're ticking both boxes. Physically, you're ticking by doing exercise. You're ticking physical health, but also you're supporting your mental health as well, like we said at the very beginning. And this includes cognitive function and all that sort of thing. I mean, as we know, there is no absolute guarantee in some of these conditions. We don't fully understand the etiology, the origin of them, but certainly we know that if you feel you're doing everything you possibly can, then in itself, that's feeling really good and empowering, isn't it? Right, I'm trying to do everything I can. And actually, the psychological effect of that is pretty important when it comes to cognitive function.
Yeah. So we've gone through the woman's reproductive lifespan now with something like that menstrual cycle, and we've got to post-menopause. So with the data, the world data on women and girls exercising is really a bad read. It shows that in every
Mm,
country they've looked at, women
mm,
don't exercise enough. And I've heard
mm,
so many people, you mentioned at the beginning, just trying to encourage people to move. I think at school, we
mm,
associate exercise with competition and games, and some people might not have been very good at that, might not have been their thing. So they've sort of parked it, which is a really bad thing to
mm,
do. Obviously, the earlier we start this, the better, but it's never too late. So, how do you think we
mm,
can try and encourage women of any age to hopefully they've obviously listened to all your wise words about how this exercise will improve our health from our heart to our bones and our brains, but um, how can we encourage women to exercise?
mm. Well, I think you're right. It goes back, Joyce goes right back to those young age groups. And by the way, I was one of those school children. I hated hockey. I didn't really like netball, but I did like tennis, and I did like swimming, and I did like doing my ballet outside. So I think it's at that young age, identifying something that you like doing, is it goes back to what we were saying at the beginning. It's something you enjoy, and it might not be everyone's cup of tea doing those competitive sports at skill. Yeah, some of them I weren't. That wasn't my favorite either. But uh, as you say, at least if you get in the habit there. But then moving on through life, actually, I would say this is a great opportunity, because then, as you say, maybe you've parked that, and then I work with lots of masters athletes who said exactly what we've just been talking about, that at school they didn't like hockey. But then it was later on they thought, well, actually, but I quite like running, I quite like cycling. And then they started to take that up at a later age. And then they found they were really good at it and they enjoyed it. So don't be scared that, oh, just because you didn't like a school sport, that doesn't mean, that you wouldn't enjoy something else. So it's a case of sort of keeping it on the boil. And also, I think that social aspect is really important. Sometimes that can really motivate you. If some friends are saying, look, I'm going to go and try cold water swimming or something, it's like, well, why not? Why don't you, give it a go? It's never too late. So um, trying to be involved in exercise, but also in general terms, like you said, activity. I mean, unfortunately, today's world, especially with COVID, when we had the lockdown and everyone's working from home, sitting at desks all day, it's just being active overall is really important. I think there are studies showing that, of course, doing exercise, going for your swim or your dance class or whatever it is very important. But then, if you're going to spend the whole of the rest of the day with your bottom parked on your chair, it kind of, I mean, it's good that you've done some exercise for sure, but actually, whilst you're sitting on your chair, enforcing breaks, and I know again you can get engrossed in work, and then you find yourself stooped over the computer. You know the one. It's like, oh my god, what's happened to my posture? And anyway, so making yourself get up and walking around, a little walk around the block or walk around your house or whatever it is, that's really important, because it will help not only your body and your movement, but actually your brain, because your brain also needs breaks as well, and also sight as well. When you've been staring at the computer screen all day, then it's not good. So so absolutely, explore different types of exercise. It's never too late, but also try and review your work patterns. I mean, there are some jobs I know which automatically you have to walk around, like if you're a teacher or if you're a doctor walking around in the hospital. But quite a lot of everybody's job nowadays is sitting down at the computer. So it's not being lazy and whatever, just to take a 10-minute break, just to do a little walk. I think that's really important. Ideally outside if you can, to include some fresh air as well. That will help your productivity in your work as well.
You're reading my brain. um, for me, I really noticed. Well, I really noticed in lockdown. I was that person going to an exercise
Mm,
class or doing an exercise class at home in the morning, and then sitting for the rest
mm,
of the day, same position.
mm,
And my back went first,
yep,
and then
yep.
I sorted them out, and then my knees went. I had a lot of trouble with
Hmm.
my knees, and it's just,
Right.
I think I think maybe it might be even worse doing a class, an exercise class at 10 o'clock, and then sitting for the rest of the day. It's so
Yep.
bad for our body to do that. So really good
Yeah, yeah,
advice.
yeah, exactly.
That movement we have to do needs to be all day. And I think for all of those working at home, I think we absolutely have got to address this. And we do. We get stuck and the clock
Mm.
just goes, so quick. We're like, oh, we've run out
Yep,
of
yep.
time. And I haven't done it. I live in a beautiful village. It's gorgeous out there, especially at the moment. The colours and everything are amazing. I am going to try and force myself. And it's not easy because we just get stuck to do a 10-minute walk. So I'm going to do it after this.
Mm.
Nikki, I'm listening to you.
Great.
I'm going to, and as you say,
Good.
I'm going to go do a 10-minute walk. Exercising outside is a win-win as well. I know it's not nice if it's raining. People have this terrible view that in England it's always raining, and it's really not. You just remember when it's
Mm.
raining. When you see the blue sky, it's beautiful blue skies today. Get out, even if it's raining. Let's put some extra clothes on. So if you're not
Mm.
doing it too much now, it's something you can definitely do on your own. But if you've got some
Yep.
friends that are working at home that live near you, let's say take half hour off and let's go for a walk. That's a win-win-win.
Mm.
Tick, tick, tick. And as you say, it will increase
Yeah.
your productivity. So moving all day,
Mm.
getting outside if you can, and get some friends along for sure. So
Mm.
just to finish off, we've talked a lot about exercise, but obviously for our well-being and for our women's health, you mentioned sleep and nutrition as well, and you mentioned this
Mhm.
in your book. So maybe just the last thing about, you mentioned sleep already, and anything else about sleep, and also about what we're eating, what we're putting in our stomachs.
Mm. So the thing is, I'm going to actually quote Hippocrates. Hippocrates said 2,000 years ago, he was onto something, this chap. He said if we could give every individual just the right amount of nutrition and exercise, not too little and not too much, we would have found the surest way to health. I mean, what wise words. So we are talking about lifestyle. Now, the interesting thing about Hippocrates, he said this, and it makes absolute sense to us. It's like, oh, yeah, of course, that's right. But why is he right? And it's because of the hormones, because our hormones are programmed from evolution to keep us healthy, right? Okay, homeostasis, everything nice and healthy and stable inside our bodies. That's what they will do. But they respond to what we do on the outside. So if we sit all day, if we eat probably excessive food, maybe because we're sitting all day, so we don't, and our sleep patterns are not good, then this is going to impact your hormones, and the hormones direct the direction of our health, physical and mental health, whether it's going to go good or bad, if you see what I mean. So absolutely, exercise is one of these key things, but it's in combination with nutrition and sleep. That is the recipe for healthy hormones. And if you have healthy hormones, you will have overall health and well-being. So top tips for exercise, I think we've done that, Joyce. But in terms of top tips for sleep, why sleep and the pattern of your sleep, more precisely, is so important is because all your hormones have their own internal biological clocks. So you want to try and get synchrony with your internal clocks. If you have a mismatch, then you can develop what's called circadian misalignment, which is metabolic syndrome, which is big risk of type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease, because you are pushing against the hormones, and there's only going to be one winner in this situation. So sleep actually is pretty crucial in addition to your exercise. And going to bed at a regular time, actually setting an alarm. These are my top tips for good sleep. Right. So-called sleep hygiene. So actually putting an alarm on for going to bed, and not, I know I'm guilty of this myself. Don't know about you, Joyce, but I'm really bad. Looking at the computer or an email, or I can look at that at like 10 o'clock at night. It's like, don't do it. Okay. Don't look at that or your phones, because the light emitted from those screens, they impact the production of the sleep hormone melatonin. So getting to bed at a regular time, really sets you up probably for a good night's sleep and coordination with your internal hormones. Going back to my grandmother, by the way, as a slight aside, she always used to say, oh, yes, it's the hours of sleep you get before midnight's really important. And I used to think literally, oh, this is an old wives' tale. And then lo and behold, I think it was sometime last year or the year before, recently anyway, a paper came out saying exactly this, that it is that regular bedtime, ideally before midnight, that is so important for hormone health and therefore overall health. So thank you to my grandmother, not only for dance classes, but her wise words of wisdom around sleep. And then the nutrition, of course, in general terms, again, it goes down to the individual. We all have different energy requirements because we're all different. Even in women of the same age, will be different body compositions. We will have different levels of activity, So again, try not to compare yourself with, especially, stuff you see on social media. It's like, oh, look, this person is eating this and this is how they look. And you think, oh, well, if I do that, I'll look like that. It doesn't translate, I'm afraid. So nutrition, it just goes back again to common sense and what my grandmother used to say, that breakfast is a really important meal of the day, and having those regular meals really super important, because regularity is what your body likes, because then you're in sync with your hormones. So those are some basic, we can't go into specifics because everyone's individual, but again, everyone, I'm sure, can try and make sure they're getting to bed at a good hour every day. Of course, we'll all have the occasional time when we're late, that's fine, but in general, trying to go to bed early, not looking at computers. And in terms of nutrition, make sure you are eating in a regular fashion, covering all the food groups. Again, we know it's busy. Life is busy, and you can mean to have lunch at a time, and then you get carried away, and then it's like, oh no, it's really late. But again, trying to make it a bit more of a routine for your body, your hormones, and therefore your health will definitely thank you for it.
Thank you, Nicky. And I must say that quite a lot of my friends go to bed at 9 or 10 o'clock. That I think it's something people often don't talk about, but they, when I've asked them, they do. And I never set. And I take your point about setting the alarm in the evening. I never set an alarm in the morning. Very, very rarely. I know I'll be up, so I don't set an alarm. So I wake when my body needs to wake, or when the cats wake me up, but they're not that often. But not when my alarm wakes me up. So, Nicky, I'm sure in your career you have talked and helped so many people with all the topics we've talked about today. Have you heard people say to you, why didn't anyone tell me this? Why didn't I know this before? And if so, what was the main thing they asked or said?
The main thing they comment on is the beautiful choreography of the female hormones. It's like, oh, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that's what was happening in my body with my hormones during the menstrual cycle. And I didn't realize that's what happened to my hormones as you go through this amazing journey, this female hormone odyssey, as I describe it. But specifically, if I'm allowed to give one thing, I would say sometimes the most common thing is a woman saying, I didn't realize that these types of hormonal contraception suppress all the production of my internal hormones. And that actually is, not surprising, but really concerning. And since last year, I got NICE to change the guidelines and to say that if a woman presents and her periods have stopped, she's not pregnant, right? But she's got an imbalance in her lifestyle behaviors around the sleep, the nutrition, and the exercise. So her periods have stopped. Then the tendency was just to put this woman on hormonal contraception, the combined oral contraceptive pill, because it made everyone feel better, because she would have a withdrawal bleed. It's not a period. The doctor would feel they've done something, but it does nothing for bone health. So actually, that is probably the most common comment I've had from people. I didn't realize that. And I wish I had known that. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's certainly always learning more things.
Mm.
So Nikki, you do so much. You're very, very active. So what on a day-to-day basis, what motivates you to do all the great things that you do?
It's mainly because, I find it very rewarding, like explaining to people this is what's happening and giving them advice. And although I'm a medical doctor, at less and less of the time, I'm actually having to suggest medication, which is, I think, a good thing because, I've come to realize that these lifestyle factors, our choices, the balance of our lifestyle, uh, is so influential to our hormone health. And so that's what really gives me satisfaction or pleasure, being able to explain that in terms that people can understand and implement. And then they come back and they say, okay, my periods have restarted, or I don't know, whatever it is. I'm feeling much better. I'm be able to do this. And, thank you so much for explaining that to me in a way that I could actually achieve something and, do it for myself. It's empowering to have information to do it for yourself rather than, as often happens, if you see a doctor, you sometimes think they're going to give you, a magic prescription for a magic pill and everything will, but actually it's much more satisfying to have sorted it out yourself through some directed advice from me. So that's really my motivation, to see that, these explanations and support can really help people reach their full potential. As I say in the title on my book, that's everyone's different, but whatever that is objective for you, everyone deserves to, get the most out of their life and live it to their full.
You certainly are empowering women. It's wonderful. So what makes you happy, and where is your happy place? So this might not be anything to do with work at all. I'm writing, I'm writing a book about good health and happiness,
Mm.
and I want to try and see how we can ensure that every woman is happy. But so I'm asking everyone, what makes them happy, and where's your happy place?
I think you might have guessed it already. uh, it is actually, well, if I'm allowed two things, um, definitely I'm in my happy place when I go to my ballet class, because I'm going to see all my friends that have been my friends there for, I don't know, 30 years or something. So it's like, oh, I'm going to have a catch up with them and say hello to them and see what they're up to. But also that because it's totally different, I have to forget work and everything, because otherwise I won't be able to take in those steps. I know I've had that when I've had something on my mind and it's like, no, I need to put that away because I need to really focus and enjoy, and I need to listen to the music. So that is when I'm just like, that is my sacred time in my ballet class. I'm doing it for me and with my friends, and it's great. But the other thing that makes me really happy, of course, is, family and friends. And that's so important, those social connections. And, I'm fortunate I've got two lovely grown up boys. And even though one of them is in New Zealand, so he's a long way away and doing a PhD, we're going to go and visit him next year. But, having our family catch ups when they're virtual family catch ups, it's just like that's really lovely. And when we are all together. So I think those are my two, the times when I'm happy in my ballet class, and then, with my family, having a laugh and a joke. That's, laughter. That's always very important.
One of my lovely sons has just rung the doorbell. But he's coming in, he's coming in. I'm just going to make my hand up to tell him to be quiet. Um, and the very last question is, what advice would you give your younger self?
um, well, I think actually all the things that I learned and set out to learn and understand about the hormones, um, maybe I should have applied them to myself. In retrospect, it's like, yeah, I was overdoing it with exercise. I was very fixated about my weight and my shape. And actually, it's like, hold on a minute, look at the bigger picture here. What are your um, priorities? But never, having said that, On the other hand, having navigated that, it's like, your life is a series of experiences. And so I guess I did learn from that myself, and hopefully made me a bit more empathetic to, it's all very well us talking about the theory, or, we advise it's good to do this and that, but actually empathy and understanding, because I was there myself, even if you know all the theory and it's all logical and you get it, actually putting that into practice is the most challenging. So I'm hoping that as I say, that helps in my current work, and empathy for people I work with, and helping them navigate that, what can be a tricky journey.
Fantastic. Nicky, that's brilliant. It's been so good. We've been working together for about 8, 9 months now, but it's great to see how many things we have in common. You literally said everything I would have said the same way. It was amazing. So thank you so much, and everyone needs to watch out next year. We will be
Hmm.
with our wonderful team at UCL. We will be doing a lot of work. We've done quite a lot already around our UK menopause education and support program. And yeah, tune into Nicky. She's on lots of platforms and things, doing lots of great work encouraging us all to exercise. And I'm going to go for a walk in 10 minutes. Thank you, Nicky. It was really great to talk to you.
Thanks, Joyce. My pleasure. Great.